Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a magnifying glass to a really fascinating, honestly deeply philosophical concept from creators Zay and Naye. It's a powerful commentary on the commodification of our very survival. They raise some heavy, fundamental arguments about how we as human beings interact with the Earth's natural resources today versus how we did in the past. Okay, let's dive into this. Zay and Naye anchor their entire philosophy on one incredibly direct premise. Everything you need to survive was already here. They're basically asking us to pause, and mentally rewind the clock, back to a timeline long before modern economics, before currency, before all these commercial systems. They point out that the raw materials required to keep a human being alive, they aren't human inventions. And that sets the stage for a really profound psychological analysis of how we view our place on the planet today. To make their case, they use a natural rule of three, mapping out a chronological progression of privatization: trees and fruit, water and land. By breaking the argument down into these three primal phases, they construct this clear, undeniable roadmap of exactly how essential resources transitioned from being totally naturally accessible to being financially gated. And this brilliantly illustrates the first major claim about the commodification of naturally occurring food. We started with our fruit trees, right? A totally natural state where food just grew from the earth, free for the taking by anyone who needed to eat. But then the paradigm shifted to a system that, as they put it, sold us back the fruit. Zay and Nye argue that a freely available natural resource was claimed, enclosed, and then the biological output of that resource became transactional. It's literally the first step in their argument that our basic biological survival became a retail product. Okay, so from food, we move to water. Think about historic natural water sources like rivers, rain, and springs. For thousands of years, these ancient bodies of water successfully nurtured entire human civilizations, completely unimpeded by commerce. It's just a stark historical reminder that for the vast majority of human history, the water required to sustain a population was freely flowing and universally accessible. But then, here is the modern contrast. The very same free, natural water systems, the rain and rivers that were once the unowned lifeblood of humanity, have been captured, bottled, and sold right back to us as a commercial commodity. Zay and Na are arguing here that something as utterly elemental as hydration has been packaged into a system that we are now absolutely mandated to purchase, just to survive. Which brings us to perhaps the most foundational element of all, land. Zay and Nague ask us to remember that the physical Earth deeply, deeply predates human geometry and mapping. As they state, it's land that existed long before any human being drew lines around it. They're highlighting the kind of arbitrary nature of drawing lines over dirt and rock to signify that someone owns it. And they attach a massive psychological weight to the very idea of borders and property lines. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the jarring juxtaposition between mere physical existence and modern financial obligations. Look at it, standing on the earth versus having a payment plan. Simply standing on the earth is a biological requirement of having a physical body with mass, right? Yet the system demands you have a payment plan just to occupy that physical space. They're highlighting this incredible tension between the natural necessity of taking up space and the systemic demand that you literally must financially compensate someone just to exist there. So the crucial point is this concept of being born owing. Zay and Naye define this as a suffocating existential condition. You aren't starting at zero when you enter the world. You're starting in the negative. You are inherently penalized with a cost of living just for existing and for needing the exact things that the earth naturally provides. They build the tension here by reiterating these specific, uncreated necessities: water, food, and shelter. The absolute core of their argument rests on the fact that nobody, no corporation, no government, no single human being actually created these fundamental needs in their raw form. The planet produced them. Yet the system we operate within dictates that we owe somebody for them. It creates this profound friction between what the planet naturally provides and what society mandates we must pay for. And when you realize the vast scale of what it costs a person simply to stay alive, that observational frustration turns into raw, existential dread. Zay and Naye ask aloud, am I the only one this drives crazy? Because it's no longer just a historical or economic critique at this point. It becomes a deeply personal reaction to the sheer weight of it all. They're vocalizing that heavy feeling of overwhelm that comes with existing in a fully commodified world. So they follow up with a powerful rhetorical challenge. Why does a free life sound like such a crazy idea? They're actively pushing us to think about why we react the way we do. We've become so accustomed to the commodification of survival that living without buying your existence seems literally impossible to the modern ear. The very concept of a life unburdened by financial survival is almost always dismissed as absurd or radical. Let's move to and see how this builds into what they definitively label a fantasy life. They break this fantasy down into existing without three distinct things: debt, bills, and permission. I mean, really think about that list for a second. To simply exist without naturally accruing owed money, without recurrent charges for basic biological needs, and without needing legal or financial permission just to occupy a space on the earth, they highlight these three elements as the ultimate modern barriers to a truly free human experience. Which elevates the psychological intensity of the whole explanation to this question: why does simply existing sound like a fantasy? Zay and Nay point out a profound, almost tragic irony here. The most basic, natural state of any living organism, simply existing on the planet it was born on, is now viewed by modern society as a totally unattainable daydream. It really captures the incredible weight of modern expectations we all carry. Finally, they leave us with one last lingering, provocative thought. Who convinced us that this is how it's supposed to be? Who wrote the rules that commodified our basic survival? And honestly, why did we all agree to them? It's a question that might just make you look at the natural world and your place in it in a completely different light. We'll leave you to unpack that one on your own. Thank you for joining me for this explainer.